This episode is scripted by Newell Fisher and John Ruths and is narrated, recorded and edited by Newell Fisher. Hello and welcome to the Watership Down podcast episode 72, in which we will be going through section 13 of the 1978 film, Efrafa. We will also be placing the 1978 film on trial for the crime of abuse of geography, but don't worry, this will be a jury trial, unlike the summary judgment I arrogantly gave in episode 14. The nearest this trial jury will get to including a Lil, unlike poor Efrafa, will be ultra-originalists, unforgiving of any changes made to the plot of the book, but their view must be heard. I will also add, in case this isn't clear, that this is, unlike Efrafa's terrifying trial under threat of execution by dog, only a bit of fun. Blame my sense of humour if you wish. Just a few items of borough keeping this week. Sean Higgins has pointed out, in response to my assertion that Pimpernel is the only rabbit to be directly killed by other rabbits in the original novel, that Bartzia, the Auslaffer member who is attacked by Bigwig during the escape from Efrafa, is also referred to as dying. Well, technically yes. And he is certain to die in a world where broken limbs mean that for a wild rabbit. And Pimpernel's death is only reported as being assumed by Holly, who is traumatised, though presumably he hears enough to think his conclusion is reasonable as he escapes. So, on balance, I agree. Poor Pimpernel is the only rabbit of the home warren of the main characters to be killed by other rabbits, but Bartzia's death after being attacked by Bigwig is certain. Two more conversations worthy of mentioning. I've been in touch with Dr. Kat Lester of the University of Birmingham, author of the book Watership Down, Perspectives on and Beyond Animated Violence, which is due out next year and which I very much plan to read and review. You can find her on Twitter at WatershipDown40, that's the number 40. Well worth a follow. I've also been having a conversation with Joe Sutphin, who is currently working on the upcoming graphic novel of Watership Down, and I've been very impressed with his take on the integrity of the original book and the area of Britain in where it is set. He can be found on Instagram at Joe Sutphin. That's JoeSutphin. So, all that said, let's visit Efrafa as we continue with the account of Holly's terrible journey to Watership Down. Section 13. Efrafa. This section covers from 38 minutes 40 to 40 minutes 30, and the equivalent chapters from the book are chapters 21, for Efrafa to cry, and 27. You can't imagine it unless you've been there.
I tried to find you. I wandered for days. The Efrafans wouldn't let me go. They ripped my ear. Ripped it. I tried to find you.
Efrafans? What's he talking about? Holly? Let him be. He's had a bad time. He can tell us about it when he's rested.
After Fiver has made his statement about how humans will never rest until they have spoiled the earth, we learn the little Holly tells us about his journey to Watership Down, as opposed to the detailed account we get in the book. He says he was trying to find them, that he wandered for days, and then comes the statement that anyone familiar with the book would have found very strange. He says that the Efrafans wouldn't let him go, that they ripped his ear. In the book, Holly's ear is ripped as he escapes from the enraged rabbits of the warren of the Snares. Fortunately, they are not very good fighters, so he is able to get away. Under what circumstances he came to have his ear ripped in Efrafa and how he survived what would presumably have been a far more vicious attack, we never learn. Holly, who has been getting more animated, repeats that he tried to find them as he collapses again. Bigwig repeats that word. Efrafans. He wonders what Holly is talking about and presses him for more, but Hazel says to let him rest. He can tell them more later. We see a closer shot of the traumatised Holly, his breathing distressed and heavy. He goes out of focus as an eerie musical theme plays. What we are about to see is not what happened to Holly in Efrafa, but rather an event that occurred there that seems not to have involved him, though was he there at the time? His later information about Efrafa implies he may have been. We crossfade and come into focus again to see a dark and gloomy grey burrow. Several rabbits sit looking at a frightened rabbit between two others. As the camera zooms in on him or her, the two rabbits either side pound him with their front paws and bite him as if following an instruction to do this. In the next shot, an angry-looking rabbit glares at a crowded burrow full of rabbits, all quiet and docile. Spaced through the burrow are other equally angry-looking rabbits, looking about them at the docile, bunched-together rabbits, daring them to step out of line. Then we see 3 holes underground. In front of each is a rabbit on guard. As 3 more rabbits arrive, 1 at each hole in turn, all 6 go up their assigned runs. All of the rabbits we have seen in this place had dark fur and blue eyes, with a kind of shadow under them. In a few seconds, we've been effectively introduced to a gloomy, fearful, highly organised warren. Even someone who had not read the book would instantly be able to tell that. And then, as the scene fades, we hear a male voice, and not a pleasant one. It has the clipped, cynical tones of someone under orders who just says what is necessary. He states that a young doe has a request. An incredulous second male voice, deeper and more gravelly, says, "A doe wants to see me." The camera is panning around another run. The first voice says she represents a group. There is a pause. The second voice says, "Your name?" A female voice says, "Heisensley, sir." There is a pause. The second voice tells Heisensley to be frank and that she is safe here, followed by the slightest laugh. Something suggests that no one is safe in this place. The camera has continued to pan left and right and zoom in on the grey, forbidding run. Then the shot fades to black as the second voice says harshly, "Get on with it!" Heisensley hesitantly explains that several rabbits propose an expedition to start a new warren. A new shot is coming into view. A silhouette of Heisensley speaking with a dim circle of light behind her that becomes brighter during the following conversation. Heisensley's suggestion about a new warren is instantly and strongly rejected. She persists, saying that the system is breaking down. The voice demands an explanation. Her blue eyes can now be seen in the half-light. She explains that some does can no longer produce litters. The warren is overcrowded. No sooner is an explanation demanded than she is shut down again. The voice says there will be no discussion about it. She says they will go as far away as he likes. He repeats what he said about no further discussion, and says it applies to where they are as well as anywhere else. Heisensley starts to protest. A large rabbit appears to her right, looks briefly in the direction of the second voice, then glares at her, slightly opening his mouth to show his teeth. He too is in silhouette with those deep blue eyes. Heisensley pauses, then just says, "Thank you, sir," before leaving quickly. The other rabbit moves threateningly towards her as she goes, glaring after her, then looks into camera again as we hear the voice say, "Campion." We can assume this is who the first voice belonged to. And then we see the eye in close-up. This is, of course, the damaged left eye of General Woundwort, though he has yet to be named. This feature of the General was an invention of this film, which every film version since has copied, though it does not feature in the original book. The white eye narrows as he adds, "Have her watched." It goes out of focus as we cross-fade to Holly, eyes closed, breathing heavily, still utterly traumatised. And we fade to black. Comparison with the book. The Trial. The main part of this section of the film portrays an event that we only hear referred to by Holly in the book, following his embassy to Efrafa being detained there, resulting in them having to escape. He will tell of his escape later in the film. His account includes being told about Heisensley's meeting with the council, a meeting in which she is part of a group of does. Here it seems to have been simplified to just one between her and Woundwort. For that is who the second voice was, of course, though we are yet to hear his name. So now on to the small matter of crimes against Watership Down. We begin with a statement for the prosecution, that being me. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant stands accused as follows. That on or about the late 1970s, Nepenthe Productions did wilfully and recklessly contrive a journey from Sandalford Warren to Watership Down via Efrafa by one Captain Holly, that did breach all geographical logic and therefore constituted abuse of geography. According to the United Kingdom Ordnance Survey, the site of the warren at Sandalford, Holly's starting point, lies 8.5 kilometres or 5.3 miles north by northwest from Watership Down, the end point of his journey, while the site of Efrafa, which Holly supposedly came across on his journey to Watership Down, lies 6.1 kilometres or 3.8 miles due south of Watership Down. Meaning that, as the key half lies, Holly's journey would have had to take a minimum of 14.3 kilometres or 8.9 miles south by southeast from Sandalford to Efrafa, followed by a further journey north of 6.1 kilometres or 3.8 miles to Watership Down, a total of 20.4 kilometres or 12.7 miles, all for a journey that need only be 2/5 as long. Thus it can be seen that the perceived need of the production company to summarise Holly's two separate journeys in the book into one overrode all common sense. Watership Down is a book set in real places that can be visited and have an actual geographical relationship to each other. A geographical relationship that meant a lot to the author. A film that wished to respect the integrity of that book should have found a way to respect those geographical relationships. This should have been possible with a brief reference to Holly's embassy prior to Hazel's second raid on Nuthanger, with him returning with his second account in time to tell the recovering Hazel, as he does in the film. With this blatant abuse of geography, the 1978 film opened the floodgates to retellings of this tale that ignore the original geography, and for that it should be convicted as charged. And now a statement for the defence, by my learned friend Mr. John Ruths. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I stand before you today to defend my client, Nepenthe Productions, against this serious and yet very idle accusation of abuse of geography. To start, I'll first pose a question. Shall we call the 1978 Watership Down film a bit compressed? In other words, does it attempt to tell its story but in a way that is a bit crunched down and more quickly paced compared to the book? I'm sure that you also believe this as I do. I'd also bet that you agree that to make a film not only faithful to the book, which it is, but also completely accurate, it would have taken many more hours. Watership Down 1978 has a run time of 102 minutes. Many things had to be compressed, and this is precisely why El Herrera and the Black Rabbit more or less appear as a single character. It is also the reason that we are only treated to a minimal amount of rabbit lore stories involving both these characters. Cartoon films were just starting to make a splash on the film scene. I'd estimate the completely accurate version would have taken another 72 or so minutes, making the entire runtime stand at 3 hours. While this might be feasible in today's internet-driven film market, this was just not possible in the late 70s. Now we know that Holly actually passed through Cowslip's Warren on the way to his eventual link-up with our escaped heroes from Sandalford Warren. Because Sandalford was already behind us within the film, Nepenthe Productions chose to use his en route Warren encounter along the way to be Efrafa instead. So while the story is a bit liberal with geography, it was far short of abuse. I find it impossible to find any criminal intent. One final point. Nepenthe is a drug described in Homer's Odyssey as banishing troublesome thoughts from a person's mind. Let's just focus on that and forget about this argument, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to my defence statement. May you decide in my favour, and may the force be with you. So there we have it. There will be polls on both Watership Down fans' Facebook groups, as well as on the podcast Facebook group and on Twitter. The verdict will be handed down next week. And may justice prevail. Next time, a positive, uplifting episode as we arrive on Watership Down. And about time too. In both senses.